It's Mountain Monday. You know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Okay, you'll notice the title of this video, Elbowgate, how to completely fail to act like a grown-up after something bad happens. And I don't normally deal with topical stuff on Mountain Mondays, but I'm making an exception this time because of how astronomically huge this whole scandal has become. And it's really the fault of the hyper politicization, and it's an indication that the mandate that the Liberals got elected on, which in part was trying to do something about the absolutely toxic tone in the House of Commons, is desperately needed, because this has become insane. Most people know what happened, or some version of what happened, and some of the versions I've been hearing are bizarre. So I'm going to recap on this, and this is not going to be an analysis of what happened or anything. This is Mountain Monday. We deal with mental health and coping strategies on Mondays. This is not going to be who's right, who's wrong. This is going to deal with the escalation here. If you want to see my political analysis of it, I've got it up on leannakersner.com. I posted it on Friday. That was before I saw the story morph 2 or 3 times over the weekend. And it's just way off the rails at this point. So what happened is that to start a vote on something, we have a very pomp and circumstance ridden form of government in Canada. It's the British common law system, and so we borrow traditions from that, and there is an element of pomp and circumstance. When it functions, it's fun. It adds to sort of government is important. It should feel important. But when people abuse the traditions, the niceties, to behave like children, things go off the rails very, very quickly, because what happens is everybody starts standing on ceremony and trying to virtue signal in really, really destructive ways. And that's exactly what happened here. So when a vote opens, the party in power, because it doesn't work like in the US, it works that people elect a party and the leader of that party forms the government. The party with the second highest number of seats forms the official opposition. So we don't have electoral colleges, and we have a multi-party system. People say we have a 3-party system. There are actually more political parties than that in Canada. They just don't. The Green Party has 1 seat, and that's Elizabeth May, and bless her, because she was the lone adult in this whole thing. But it started in a vote about, depending on what you call it, it's either assisted dying or assisted suicide. Now, the Supreme Court of Canada threw out the law of the previous government, the Conservatives under Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper is no longer the leader of the Conservative Party. That is somebody by the name of Rona Ambrose. She's a woman, for people who aren't sure about that first name. But under that, basically what happened is the assisted dying or assisted suicide is a political hand grenade. And I talk about this on my blog, on the written version. So what happened is, instead of dealing with it in the last term, the Conservatives just decided it would be left to the next government to deal with. And so there was a very, very short timeline to legislate this. And the Supreme Court had told them, you need a law in place by June 1st. I'm not sure what the penalty is if they don't get it in, but this was a mandate from, the courts. This wasn't a nice thing. This wasn't something set by the House of Commons. This was the judges deciding this. And so as far as I can tell, and I'm not sure about this, but when the leadership whip, the leading party whip, which are the Liberals, and the leader of the whip of the official opposition were walking together to take their seats. It's supposed to be a gesture of friendship. The Conservative whip, so the leader of the opposition, was stopped from his progress by a group of, I mean, there's video, I don't know how many people there are, but a group of NDP, and that is the third party. They are the third largest party in our government. They're supposed to be left wing, but they're more to the right than the Liberals are now. So it's a little confusing, but the Conservative Party is clear. But what happened is our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who we've all known for some time is something of a hothead, got up out of his seat, which you're not supposed to do. This is the really wrong breach of decorum thing he did. I know it's weird, but welcome to the Canadian parliamentary rules. You're not supposed to get up out of your seat when a vote has started. So he got up out of his seat. He crossed the floor, took the Conservative whip by the arm to lead him past the gaggle, I will say, of NDP who were stalling the vote, according to that version of events. After all hell broke loose, people were claiming that the guy had manhandled the Conservative, but that seems to have gone away some. Maybe because the Conservatives think the NDP is easier to beat up on right now. I don't know. But even Conservative commentators seem to be swinging over to the side of Trudeau right now, which is bizarre. But this whole situation is bizarre. So in grabbing the Conservative whip's arm, Trudeau accidentally elbowed a NDP MP by the name of Ruth Ellen Brazeau. She happens to be a woman. She was also a participant in this physical blockade. So I want to present both sides of this because this is not a partisan thing. This is analysis of people being unable to behave like grown-ups. And so Brazeau had a very notable reaction. There are cameras running in the House of Commons, so we see exactly what happens. She turns to the side, grabs her chest, clearly says, ow, which I think anybody in that situation would. But it was a big reaction. And some people have later accused her of essentially pulling a LeBron James and taking a flop. This becomes important later. This is not just me being glib. This becomes important later. So all heck breaks loose because OMG, the big feminist prime minister has committed violence against a woman. And this is where our concept of equality divides. And some people believe equality is that if you are a woman engaged in a certain behavior, you're to be treated just like anybody else there. And so if it's okay to do to a man, it's okay to do to a woman, and vice versa. If it's not okay to do to a man, then it's not okay to do to a woman. And if it's not okay to do to a woman, then it's not okay to do to a man. That is my idea of equality. Equal treatment. Other people believe that because women have more challenges, including in government, and there are very serious issues in the treatment of women behind the scenes in government. No one's denying that. But because of that, they believe that women deserve a leg up, for lack of a better term, to recognizing the unique challenges women face. And I don't think that applies here, but that is what the NDP have attempted to claim, that women should feel safe in the House of Commons. And there's an element of the House of Commons is completely safe until you make the decision to be part of something that is physical. And we need to recognize that the premeditated act here, if we're to talk about accountability here, the premeditated act was the NDP stalling, using multiple people to block the route of the Conservative Party whip. That was the premeditated act. Everything else that happened afterward was a fit of pique. Does it make it right? No. But we factor in premeditation when we determine the severity of an act. So, in my opinion, and I compare this to when I used to work crew in TV shoots. When you work crew, especially in crowds at like music festivals or an award show or something like that, it is a very physical job. You get banged up a lot. The most painful thing I have ever gone through is being hit with a jimmy jib. The not the crane part. For people who don't know, a jimmy jib is the camera on the crane, and there are actual barbell weights, like, you know, the big round plates that you put on the weights to bench press. Those counterbalance the camera on the jib, and it's different weights depending on how long the arm is. Now, those weights are held on by a metal post, just like at the gym. And sometimes they'll put a tennis ball cut open on the end of it. Sometimes they don't. And twice I was hit in the hip by the jimmy jib as it swung around and I was standing too close to it. Now, I considered that my fault because I was standing too close to the camera. I was not aware of my surroundings. It happens. You get bonked on the head. You slip, you fall. Things happen when there are bits of metal whizzing around in the environment. It was bruised. It hurt a lot. But I don't feel like I was assaulted. Similarly, when you're doing a process called camera spotting, it's you basically put your hand on a camera person's back, a camera operator's back, so that they can walk backwards, covering two talent who are walking forward. We call it a walk and talk shot. And so you have to be sort of the crowd breaker, moving people out of the way so that the camera can continue back at a steady rate. And, you know, the cameraman can't see, the camera person can't see because they're walking backward. And so you do take knocks, especially when, you know, there's a band on stage and everybody's dancing and performing and you know, they're not paying attention to where they're going. You sometimes take elbows and, you know, smacks, just the way that happened in the House of Commons. You know, smacks to the face, smacks to the chest. So I know what that's like. It rings a bell. I prefer it when I get hit in the boob as opposed to hit right in the breastbone. That's what really hurts, when it manages to bypass my sizable defenses in this regard and catch me right here or under, like on the side by my ribs. That hurts. But in the boob, it's like, you know, plenty of padding for me. I was good at that job, maybe because I do have padding. But it happened. It happened quite frequently. It is the reality of the job. Now, if somebody intentionally tripped me or punched me in the face or something like that, that is totally different. But if somebody just isn't watching what they're doing, that's an accident. And there is no deliberate attempt to harm someone. Is it negligent behavior? There's an argument for that. But to make it into some sort of deliberate act is not accountable and it's not responsible. And but it's going one step further because everybody got up. I mean, Trudeau just apologized 3 times, which is, when you're doing damage control, Trudeau did the absolute right thing. Now, what he has to do going forward is learn from this because it was a mistake. He walked into their trap. I mean, Thomas Mulcair must be gleeful. It shows because they've overplayed their hand. But, you know, Trudeau has to not do this again. It's not like when he was an MP. And this is part of the thing that people need to realize. Trudeau is known for this sort of stuff, for losing his cool in the House. He's been known to drop F-bombs in the House of Commons before. He called the Conservative Environment Minister a piece of, I'll say, excrement. In response to, it was a bald-faced manipulation of the facts that he was responding to, but that's the game, and you have to be prepared for the game when you sign up. Now, the thing about Ruth Ellen Brosseau is that she didn't sign up for this. She was what was called a paper candidate in the NDP during something called the Orange Crush, which was an unprecedented shift in Quebec towards the NDP under the leadership of the late Jack Layton. The orange is the color of the NDP party signage. And so a lot of candidates who thought they were just running, they didn't think they had any chance of being elected, put their name on the ballot because you need a certain number of candidates running in a certain number of ridings to be considered a national party. And so Brosseau was one of those people. And so she went to Las Vegas in the middle of the campaign for her birthday. And there was a big kerfuffle about that. Now, she got accused of playing the victim then as well. And I want people to know about this because there's precedent for people having some of the reactions they did now that I think people are forgetting. People said what she did was completely irresponsible. She should have canceled her trip. She says she didn't think she was going to win, so she didn't cancel her trip. There are two sides to that. I see both sides, but people are entitled to their opinion that it is not, how do I put this? It is not respecting the office you are presenting yourself as running for not putting in a serious campaign. People who respect the electoral process deeply get very upset at paper candidates who aren't really trying. Like I said, two sides. But bring it forward, some people are accusing her of shenanigans again, overplaying the how badly she was hurt, this, that, and the next thing. I don't think that's appropriate in this situation. I think that because there is video, it's fair to say that maybe she shouldn't have been there in the first place, but it looks like a sincere reaction to me. She looked more surprised than hurt, but I think it was a sincere reaction. But of course, then the online harassment starts, right? And people saying she faked it, people saying she brought it on herself. And now we have this question of whether people are attacking a member of parliament or a woman. And this is where your definition of equality becomes super, super important. Now, what do I think? I see all sides on that one. I can see how someone could send a nastygram to Brosseau and not be a misogynist. I think some people just treat her like any other member of parliament, which, let's face it, yelling at politicians is a national sport sometimes, right? We'll deny it all we want, but we are rough on our elected officials. And there's an understanding that you're expected to take more of that because you're being paid with taxpayer funds. You are not a private citizen. You are a people's representative, so they have the right to yell at you. Now, no one should swear at anybody, and people have the right to say, I am not going to continue to have this discussion with you unless you dial it back. That's totally fair. But a lot of MPs of all political stripes have jumped to her defense because of the deplorable treatment of women in public office in Canada. Now, this is politics. Don't be fooled for a second. This is politics. Some of them may mean it. Some of them may believe wholeheartedly that she is being abused by people. And I'm sure some of them are. Some people just, especially on the internet, take any opportunity to say something nasty. I don't find this is a gender-based phenomenon. I find women are just as capable of it as men do. But my attitude is that if MPs are upset about what happened to Ruth Ellen Brosseau in the aftermath of this whole thing, they have no one to blame but themselves. They set the tone. When leaders behave like children, you cannot expect the followers to behave better than the leaders. So instead of yelling at their constituents, essentially, instead of yelling at the public, recognize that they let this get out of hand in their gleeful belief that they had Trudeau on the ropes. They let it get out of hand. They dumped gasoline on a fire, used very inflammatory language, didn't realize how sensitive a lot of regular Canadians, middle-class Canadians, are to false accusations of violence against women, domestic battery, and sexual assault. And it blew up. And so I am kind of disappointed, I admit. I get saying, hey, there's no call to talk that way, but have you seen how you guys are talking to each other? If you want the average Canadian to believe that you shouldn't talk to people like that, don't talk to each other like that. Set the tone. You can't say one thing and then do another. And that's what all parties are doing right now. And the reality is it's hard. And improved conduct in the House is a journey. I don't know if anybody expected it to be perfect. I mean, yes, it's politicking that every time a liberal makes a mistake, the conservative pounce on it because the tagline was sunny ways. Well, so much for sunny ways. The clouds rolled in. It's rhetoric. I get it. But I don't know why all of them can't calm down. They get paid very well, so nobody is under, financial difficulties. Yes, they have stress, but it's not the same stress as not knowing how to pay your rent or feed your family, and they should appreciate that. The Canadian government absolutely has to start behaving like grown-ups. This was handled badly from start to finish. All parties were responsible for this, except for the Green Party. Elizabeth May, like I said, behaved like the only grown-up in the whole thing. She said shenanigans were taking place. All three parties were to blame here. And the finger pointing is just pathetic when you've got somebody who was there going, no, I was there, I saw it. It was no one's fault and it was everyone's fault, sort of thing. And if you're upset out there and you don't want to just take this because you've been on one end or another of this, either you've been a woman who's been told you shouldn't speak, you brought it on yourself and you identify with Ruth Ellen Brosseau, or you're someone who has been falsely accused of something very serious and you sympathize with Justin Trudeau, or if you think everybody's being stupid. I suggest you get proactive, because getting proactive is what an adult does. Coming from a place of calm and centeredness, and this is sort of why I decided to do this on Mountain Monday. Coming from a place of calm, acting instead of reacting is what an adult does. So I think Canadians now can set an example for our politicians. And instead of attacking, write a letter to your member of parliament, look them up. You can just send an email. I've done it. You go to their website, you find their contact information, and you send out an email. They're supposed to write back. They don't always do, but they're supposed to write back. This is part of why you may have seen in the news, Sophie Gregor Trudeau wants additional staff because she's having trouble responding to all the inquiries. But write them and say that you're not happy with the way this was handled. You're not happy with what you're seeing with the finger pointing and the the sensationalizing of something that was everyone's fault, and you're not happy with the lack of accountability in government right now. No one, except for Justin Trudeau, to his credit, he did wrong, but then he did right. No one is owning their part in the whole thing. And Trudeau's like, my conduct was completely inappropriate. It was disrespectful to the government. Fine. He's owning it. And most people, even the people who don't like him, believe he's sincere. I saw somebody who, is an NDP attack dog saying, no, he seems very sincere about this. So there are some sane people in the NDP. There are some people who are being grown-ups about this. But the gendered attitude towards the whole thing is going to make it more difficult for women stepping into these jobs because, first of all, the optics, and like this or not, ladies, this is true. Trust me, as someone who has had to navigate multiple male-dominated industries. There is a difference between knowing you're being discriminated against and just going, I'm being discriminated against. Because if you don't have proof, then you just seem like a whiner, rightly or wrongly. This is something I had to learn the hard way. It's not fair, but it's the truth. And there are ways. It doesn't mean you just take it, but there are ways of fighting smart. And as much as I do believe she was legitimately hurt, I believe that Ruth Ellen Brosseau is not being properly and appropriately supported by her party. I think they have added to the embarrassment factor of this, and she may be complicit in it now. But it is not... It was embarrassing as much as anything, but in her own words, it went from being elbowed in the chest to being hit in the breast. And I don't know if this is a word choice based on her being, French speaking primarily and English being her second language, or whether it was deliberate word choice. It's too hard to tell. But, if she was shaken up, that's totally fair. I don't think she should be blamed for that, but I think that this pageantry is not helping her because stuff like this eclipses the work you do. And, it's if this continues, it's only a matter of time before Elizabeth May gets called a gender traitor, and then that happens, we know this has gone completely off the rails. So if you want to do something, don't yell at people on Twitter. Like I said, write your MP. Be calm. State the facts. For God's sakes, don't swear. Don't insult. Just say you want to see better from all of the parties. If you are a party supporter, and I plan to do this myself, but don't say you're not going to vote for them the next time. Don't say anything like that because you don't want to back yourself into a corner with being consistent, but just say you expect better. These people we are paying their salary and we expect better. And I think that is one of the few grown-up actions that will be done in this whole thing. And I think that this whole debacle has just proven the leadership gulf on Parliament Hill right now. So that's the Mountain Monday. That is our Zen in difficult times. So we're going to close off now. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.